Hello and welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. On today's show, we are talking about the fact that there will not be a fall election. That's bad news for Canadians, but the Bloc Quebecois and NDP will be supporting the Liberals in the Conservative, not non-confidence vote. But to talk about that and much, much more, we have Dan Albas, the one and only Member of Parliament for Central Okanagan, Similkameen. Nicola, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for having me.
All right, that's bad news for Canadians. No election. It looks like Yves Blanchet is going to try to get what he can out of the Liberal government, who is really for sale at this point in time.
This is going to be really disappointing for my constituents. A few weeks ago, Jagmeet Singh basically said, I'm done with the Liberals. In fact,
he's ripping it up.
He's ripping up their confidence and supply agreement, and they were going to look to throw him out at the first opportunity. Well, the first opportunity came, and this minority government is being backed by both the Bloc and the NDP. What a sad state of affairs.
It still doesn't make any sense to me on the strategy for the NDP. There was that tough talk, and I think he said it about 8 times during every interview. I ripped up the agreement, Jagmeet Singh said. I ripped up the tough talk. But now he waited, first of all, for the Bloc Quebecois to make their decision on whether or not they support the non-confidence vote and trigger an election. Then he came out with the NDP's position, but now he's lost his bargaining power. Like, what does he get in return?
Well, again, if I were an NDP MP over the summer, I would be asking, which barbecues I want to appear at, and will I be on the barbecue? Because a lot of voters are upset at this government, and guess who has been enabling this government for the past 2 or so years? Essentially, it's Jagmeet Singh. He's backed them at every opportunity. And when the reset button was hit here, when Singh said that he was done with the Prime Minister and all that bluster, we were back in a minority situation where really an election can happen at any time, and we were hoping that there would be some more accountability. But Pierre Poilievre has been very strong on the need for accountability, and so that's why this non-confidence vote was really a measure of Jagmeet Singh and whether or not he was a man of his word. Now we find out he's eating crow instead. So. My constituents want an election. I have actually sent out a weekly MP report, and overwhelmingly, people said that they wanted an election, even though there is a provincial election happening in British Columbia. So I thought there would be at least a few people who say, no, let's not have that. People are sick of what Justin Trudeau has done to this country. They're sick of the people that have enabled him to do this to this country, essentially doubling their rents, doubling their down payments, doubling our national debt. And so people wanted to have that carbon tax election. And Jagmeet Singh actually said that it's time for the people, right? It's their time. Yeah. And so, okay, Jagmeet, I take you at least on that. Then let's have a carbon tax election. Let's vote non-confidence, and then let the people decide who they want to run this country.
It even resonated in your province, where now the provincial NDP, as the election kicked off provincially this past weekend, now they're backpedaling on the carbon tax, which they said we had to have.
Yes. This is because if you look at Justin Trudeau and you look at David Eby, the two are two sides of the same coin. And essentially now, because he's looking at the polls and is realizing that Justin Trudeau is not the popular person that he thought he was, that, who would have thought that having crime, disorder, drugs being done out in our neighborhoods would do that? Well, every person that loves their community hates what this NDP Liberal government, provincially and federally, has done to this country. And so that's where when Pierre says we want to restore the Canada we knew, and still love, that's where a lot of people are at, because they're through with these. And so if you look at what Trudeau has been offering people, he's suffered a number of by-election losses, and now people are saying, well, if you're with him, so if the NDP is with him through thick and thin, making this country a worse place to be, I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah, and it was like 9 years ago, things were more affordable. Housing was at a reasonable rate, so more and more people could afford it. Crime was coming down. Like, Canada was on a very good path, and all it took was 9 years of Justin Trudeau and his buddies like David Eby and others to start this downward spiral that we seem to find ourselves in.
Well, and as much as we can heap a lot of blame on Justin Trudeau himself and Jagmeet Singh for supporting him through these past few years, we should also now give Blanchette, the leader of the Bloc Quebecois, his due, because he's voted numerous times to support the Prime Minister. And he tries to play it two different ways, where he says, oh, I'm not supporting the Liberals. But yet, what has he done? He's supported things like C11, which have expanded the CRTC's government control over the internet. It's centralized more power in Ottawa away from Quebec and its National Assembly. The cost that the average Quebecois is paying to pay down our national debt has doubled in the past year. Yeah. So, he can try and say that he has not supported Justin Trudeau and is continuing not to, but essentially by choosing to vote against Pierre Poilievre's motion of non-confidence in the government, he's just showing that he's part and parcel with it. Again, it's that costly coalition backed by the NDP and by the Bloc Quebecois. The only party right now that is thinking about Canadians is the Common Sense Conservative Party. But this is where, again, no one's forcing them to vote in favor of Justin Trudeau. They could easily just listen to their constituents like mine.
Yeah.
So this is a choice they're making, Jamie.
It'll be interesting what happens in Quebec, because let's queue up cut one. Over the weekend, the Quebec Premier, Legault, came out and basically, well, he didn't basically, he flat out called out the Bloc Quebecois for propping up the Liberals, and it looks like the the Quebec Premier wants an election. Let's have people decide. Let's play cut one.
What are you getting from the government in exchange for propping them up?
I'm propping nobody up. Et en français aussi, là, soutenir les libéraux. Je ne soutiens pas les libéraux, je vote contre les conservateurs et je ne soutiens toujours et exclusivement que les intérêts des Québécois. I never support liberals. Help me God. I go against the Conservatives on a vote that is only about Pierre Poilievre and his huge ambition for himself.
Now, the motion we're talking about, the motion we'll be voting on, is very straightforward.
Yes, essentially it says that the House does not have confidence in this Prime Minister and government.
Which they've all said. Well, Jagmeet Singh and Yves Blanchette.
But, so help me God, he says. He's going to need a lot of help to make sense of what he's been doing. Again, between the NDP and the Bloc, they voted to support raising the carbon tax and maintaining the carbon tax, 20 plus times. They've given more money to Ottawa, and they've taken away from Quebecers, as I said, whether it be their online activities, what they can and cannot see through their streaming services. That's covered by C11. When you look at some of their agenda to take more money away from Quebec to put towards the federal government, what it decides, this is, again, against what most Quebecers would say the Bloc is there to do. So I think it's perfectly fair for Premier Legault to be calling the Bloc out, that essentially they are supporting a government that's way past its due date.
I agree. Let's go up cut two, because this is the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, after his decision not to support the non-confidence vote. Play cut two.
Why didn't you say this yesterday? Why didn't you say this yesterday?
We're letting you know today.
Why didn't you say it yesterday? You've had more than 24 hours. Why did you wait for the Bloc to say this first? Other than to maybe give yourself some political cover, why didn't you say it yesterday?
We're letting you know today.
But how can you say this when you've said Trudeau must go repeatedly? How do you square that?
In the next election, people have a choice. I stand by my words.
What words?
This is the thing, is we had the tough talk that you said, tearing up the agreement and making the case for why Trudeau shouldn't be there. To where they are today. Let's just call a spade a spade. The NDP is weak, and as I said earlier, a summer of being at the barbecues where people are grilling them for why we're supporting such an unpopular government. I can see why they don't want to have an election, because their numbers are so low. So let's just call a spade and say the NDP, obviously aren't ready for an election, and all their tough talk of their leader is just that, tough talk.
So costs are up, crime's up, and the economy is on shaky ground. And this Liberal government continues to waste more and more money. And let's have that carbon tax election. Let's see what Canadians have to say about that. At the same time, this government continues, I think, is basically in free-for-all mode. They're trying to do whatever they can to hang on to power, and sadly, taxpayers will be at the brunt of this. The latest being a multi-billion-dollar deal for a Quebec company to provide internet for Canadians. Now, I think we can all agree, we all have rural communities that do need internet. That is not the issue. The issue that seems to be over and over with this government is their benchmark is how much money can they spend or what new programs can they create. Whether or not the outcomes are being achieved or not, that really doesn't matter. So while we talk about this, I just want to put up the graphic from our friend and colleague from Ontario, Michael Barrett. He's the ethics critic. Basically talking about this investment, the $2.14 billion loan to the Quebec company, and Elon Musk, who has Starlink, lots of people in my area have Starlink, he says we can connect all Canadians for about half that amount. That's a pretty stark savings for Canadians, but also achieving the outcome, which is connectivity.
Well, and that's the interesting part, Jamie, is when, what exactly is the government trying to do here? Because when this announcement came out that they were giving such a large amount and a high interest loan to a company to basically compete head to head with other low Earth orbit internet providers like Starlink, essentially they said it's all about connectivity.
Yeah.
But again, the technology is not running yet. It's not like those satellites are out there. And right now, I think the very common sense point that Michael was making is that, if you look at it, there's about 5 or 6 programs run by the federal government. Some are through the CRTC, some are, connecting with Canadians, some work with provinces and territories. So instead of taking a hold of ready-to-go technology like Starlink, instead, at a much lower price, instead, they're giving high-interest loans to connected companies. And let's be mindful that this company, Telesat, is actually owned by its parent company, which is based in the United States.
That's right.
And I know the Public Sector Investment Board also has invested heavily in Telesat. And so if it's not for connecting people today, then okay, what's on the agenda? Now, the moment there started to be some discussion about these things, immediately the Liberals switched the channel. Oh, it's about national security. And so it's curious that it's not the Department of National Defense that is funding this. It is, again, still what was formerly known as industry that it's doing these loans, which, by the way, has a history of not being transparent on loans. And it neglected to say whether or not this is going to be a forgivable loan. And so forgive me.
Which would be an amazing advantage in the marketplace.
Well, exactly.
And
because
distortion.
That's right. So again, if it's not for national security, where the Department of National Defense isn't heralding this, which, by the way, would have gone towards our NATO spend, which could have made more sense. Instead, what it does look like is people with connections are seeking out taxpayer money to basically get things that they wouldn't be able to get at the market interest rates. And again, this is a high interest rate loan. Doesn't belie the two facts that, number one, they're going to the government of Canada for it instead of the market, which should send signals. And second of all, that particular department has a history of not telling taxpayers how much money has been actually repaid, if at all.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. And you probably saw the articles in the National Post, I believe it was, that had Carbon Tax Carney with the head of that Quebec company getting that amazing contract. It just very coincidental how Carbon Tax Carney comes on the scene as the savior of all, and all of a sudden, all these contracts start getting awarded to companies that are, affiliated or indirectly or directly with Carbon Tax Carney.
Well, you see a lot of connecting the dots here, where it's people that are on the inside that have those connections are able to take taxpayer money for things that probably should be funded on their own. But again, I go back to what is this here to do? Because, and this is something the Liberals specialize in. When Michael Barrett raised the issue of Starlink, something that exists today, works today, and said, could we roll this out in a way that Canadians be connected at a much fewer cost for that service? Immediately, the Liberals went on the attack. Why? It's because they like to demonize Elon Musk as much as they can. Now, look, I'm a conservative. I believe that we should have technology compete with one another. And we should be looking and saying, how does the consumer benefit from having those technologies go head to head. Like we've seen over the past 15 years, we've gone from fiber optics to wireless internet to try to connect those last communities. Like for example, Logan Lake in my riding, they don't have high-speed internet access like many other communities, even though Highland Valley Copper Mine has access to the internet and puts in more to BC's GDP than probably a large chunk of the Lower Mainland. They don't have it. And so I think what's going to be disappointing to my constituents in Logan Lake is rather than saying, well, why don't we work with current providers and with this technology that Starlink has in the mix to deal with the problem of connecting Canadians. Instead, they see a very high interest loan, which usually says that there's more risk. And you see that the Liberals, because they can't defend it vis-a-vis on a commercial basis, they start talking about national security. So it's dubious. It doesn't help people in my area. It doesn't help people in remote and rural communities, especially up north. And I think that that's really where we should be having the discussion right now. Is this so-called investment, and I put my fingers up on it because really it does look like it's picking winners and losers.
Yep.
It really makes losers of everyone.
And if this doesn't work, the government will do what it always does, ask for more time, more patience, more money, and just trust them. They'll get it right.
Yeah, and by the way, again, this particular department has been known just to write things off and say, oh, I guess it's speculative. And, that's really where, again, the only party that is committed to seeing real connectivity and having that clash of, competition. That's what reduces prices for the taxpayer or for consumers, is having those viable technologies square off and having it where consumers can make their own choices. And that's obviously something the Liberals aren't content to do.
No, well, competition makes everything better. Better product, price, service, you name it. Dan, we're pretty much out of time. So many more things to talk about, but we did have a good discussion. As you know, the guests get the last word. The floor is yours.
I just say again, my constituents want a carbon tax election. They know that this government is well past its due date. So I think what we need to do is exactly what Mr. Singh said. Let the people decide. So that's one area that I will actually agree with Jagmeet Singh on. The rest, well, I'm a conservative, so I'll stand with Pierre.
Well, shameful for even doing that, but I do understand why. Thank you very much, Dan Albas, Member of Parliament for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola. Great to have him on the show. Thank you for your time, Dan, and thank you for yours. Don't forget, we want to, as a party, as supporters of the Conservative movement, continue to lay out the agenda as to why we need that carbon tax election. So we ask for your help. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. Don't forget to tell your friends. They can download it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. You name it, it's out there. New content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next week, remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.